Alex Palou wins the title for the IndyCar season. It's obviously his first title. He, in his second full season, he's the first Spaniard to win an IndyCar championship. And he
really?
Yeah, I know that.
That's
that was
surprising.
That's kind of was surprising, because you think of all the drivers that have ran, you would have thought. That.
But have they been Spaniards? I guess.
Right. But anyway, he defeats Joseph Newgarden by 38 points. He won 3 races this season: Alabama, Road America, and Portland. It's his first full/normal season in IndyCar, because remember, his rookie season was last year, and it was the weird COVID season. So they still ran 14 races, but it still wasn't a normal year. And so what? It's pretty exciting. The youth movement is in full force. You have Alex Palou, who is 24, Pato O'Ward, who's 22. He finished 3rd in the point standings. Colton Herta, who's 21, he finishes 5th in the point standings. And then it's not that Joseph Newgarden and Marcus Ericsson, some of the other guys in that top area of the point standings, are necessarily super old. So you've got, but they're more established names. But you have these kind of newer drivers who have come in over these past few years and now are finally starting to take center stage. It's really pretty fun to watch. And I think next year's IndyCar season is wide open. You have those youngsters that we talked about, plus the ageless Scott Dixon. I think Alexander Rossi could have a bounce back year next year. You've got already some silly season moves where drivers are moving around, and that could cause some crazy things to happen. So I think in terms of the sport, I think it's a really good time to buy in on IndyCar right now, because you're finally breaking away. Heck, at the beginning of the year, we were talking about how, the dominant year that Scott Dixon had the previous year, and Scott Dixon is a name that we talk about constantly, when we talk about IndyCar, and he was a mainstay even in our college days. And then you have Joseph Newgarden. He and Dixon have been swapping titles over the past few years, and I think, and that was kind of why we chose who we chose at the beginning of the year. It was like, well, it's going to be one of the two. And I think next year you have, maybe 5, 6, 7 drivers to choose from, because, and including Palou. I think Palou's, primed to have a good season again next year. So it's really going to be a fun off season, and then a fun regular season next year in IndyCar to watch. And I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, me too. I was really excited. It was really good to see a new face holding the Astor Cup. Props to Chip Ganassi, I gotta say. That's what when it all comes down to it. Props to him for seeing that talent and pouncing on it, because a second-year driver doesn't typically get thrown in with the big boys of Ganassi or Penske or anything like that. So to be able to see this young guy come in there, look, he was racing along. His teammates were, Tony Kanaan for a little bit, Scott Dixon, Jimmy Johnson. Those are all championship caliber drivers, whether or not they've won IndyCar Jimmy Johnson, no IndyCar championships, but NASCAR. Just think about the mentoring that he gets on a daily basis from that team. That's just unbelievable. And then you could see last year that Alex Palou was going to be a special driver. You just didn't know it was going to happen this quickly. What's great about him is that he's an aggressive driver, but he's also a smart driver. He pushes it, and reminds me a lot of Alexander Rossi in that sense. But for some reason, Alexander Rossi has lost that edge, that aggressive edge that he used to have, that I always thought would lead Alexander Rossi to a championship, but it never did. Alex Palou, I think, Alex Palou has a little bit much better equipment underneath him on a every week basis compared to Alexander Rossi. But I love that there's a youth movement now. And it's still going to be good that there's guys like Scott Dixon, like Simon Pagenaud, even, I guess. Can you count Page as somebody that's up there?
I mean, I don't know where he is age-wise as far as like, the youth movement goes, but...
Oh, he's definitely older.
Right.
But, I mean, you can tell IndyCar is now starting to come around to it because, I mean, Tony Kanaan, I don't think has a ride next year. I think he's done. James Hinchcliffe, he's looking like he's going to do more broadcasting. Ryan Hunter-Reay, I haven't read anything about where he's going. I mean, I guess when you look at the teams, the oldest team is probably going to be Meyer-Shank with Elio and Simon. Penske is going younger. I mean, Will Power is going to be the old grizzled vet of that team. It's going to be Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin, and watch for him to have a really solid year too. I know we're going to get to that in a little bit later, but rookie of the year. So yeah, the future is very exciting for IndyCar because you always have that worry that how is a sport going to transition from these current stars to the next? The NFL had to go think about that for a while, with Peyton Manning getting up there in age, Eli Manning, and Tom Brady. Well, he's still around, but those guys, and it's succeeded. The transition has been smooth with Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. So IndyCar is now starting to go through that, and to be able to see that essentially the top three. 4 of the top 5 are all young drivers. That's great. I mean, Joseph Newgarden's still relatively young.
He's 30. He's my
30?
age. Yeah, he's my age. Well, I mean, not that I say that like we're that far apart in age, but I mean,
still, I didn't realize he was 30.
Yeah.
Okay, but even 30 is still young, especially when you see guys like Elio Castroneves. You act like I'm old. But you see guys like Elio Castroneves still out there winning the Indy 500, and so 30 is not that. I'll still put Joseph Newgarden in the youth movement because he is a newer star,
right?
And looking at guys like the Tony Kanans, the Scott Dixons, the Ryan Hunter-Reays, those guys moving on. They're not moving on.
When you think about it, like I mean, I know it's different in auto racing, but 30 is typically like kind of the cutoff when a athlete, in any sport is starting to kind of get.
They're beyond. They're getting into
their prime. Yeah.
Or some positions
or,
are right in their prime.
Or like on the tail end of their prime.
Right. So with racing, it's almost like that's where you're starting. Kind of like with baseball, it seems like too. Baseball, you see them later 20s.
Yeah.
When they make the big show, but yeah, I'm super excited about the future of IndyCar. But what's great is that they're not dominating the field. You still see the guys like Scott Dixon, even though he had a quiet 4th place finish in the standings. To me, he didn't really just have that Scott Dixon feel to his season. There was a few races. I mean, he won, but he was never just a constant threat every single race like he has been. Whereas Alex Palou felt like it there for a while, and then he tailed off, and then because that's when Pato O'Ward took the points lead. But it's good. This is great. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see these three that you mentioned, Palou, O'Ward, and Herta, battling it out for the next 10 years as long as everybody stays in IndyCar. And if I had to say, I would say that Herta is the next one of that bunch to win a championship.
Now, like, I'm trying to think, before we move on to next season, I was trying to think about, like, did we really see this type of youth movement, like, kind of like when Scott Dixon and all them were younger? Because I feel like around the time that, like, some of these older guys were first coming into the league, like, into IndyCar, it was, like, sort of at the tail end of, like, the merger, like, the integration with kart. And, like, some of those drivers were, like, not, like, were new to IndyCar, but not, like, new to racing. They were, like, older. So, like, I feel like there wasn't really a youth movement like this. And I can't remember, like, a time, at least since I've, like, followed the sport as closely, like, which would be, like, 2000 was my first Indy 500. Like, I don't remember there being one, like, quite this vast as far as you having a bunch of drivers. I mean, there's obviously been new drivers to, like, get on the scene and you're like, oh, here's a rookie that's really good, But it's like I said, I don't remember a time where there was like this many young drivers that you go into the next season like, oh, these are all championship contenders.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been this large of a youth movement before in IndyCar. I mean, not in my memory. I'm sure there has been at some point in time. But, there's been a small trickle here or there. I mean,
Right.
Alexander Rossi, his rookie year winning the 100s, running the Indy 500. Elio Davis, when he was a rookie, there's been those types of things. I mean, Dan Weldon when he was younger. I guess maybe if there was anything, it may have been then, because if you think about it, at that point, you had a young Dan Weldon, you had a young Will Power. Will Power
was Will Power the same time as Dan Weldon? I mean, I know when Weldon won his second 500, he was, but
maybe not. But you had
you had Danica.
You had like Sam Danica. You had Sam Hornish Jr.
Yeah.
You had a young Tony Kanaan.
Right.
At that point, obviously a young Scott Dixon, a young Dario Franchitti. So those guys all kind of came up around the same time, but I'm not 100% certain, to this extent.
Right, and I don't think they were all. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think they were all like really early 20s, and I mean, and because they, like I said, a lot of those guys all had like extensive, I feel like, open wheel like backgrounds, whereas like you have like as well. Yeah, I know, because I know Elio came from like kart, and I think Hornish was like always IndyCar. Danica, I can't remember what Danica did before.
She was USAC.
USAC, okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that would probably be the best like comparison. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, all of those I don't think were really. They were more like probably in their mid to late 20s as opposed to being like fresh into their 20s.
Yeah, and then I can't remember. Did Palou, was he Indy Lights?
I don't remember, honestly.
Because Award and Herta are shining examples of why the road to Indy through the Indy Lights series is such a great program.
Right.
I mean, I remember watching both of those guys battle it out in the Freedom 100, not against each other, essentially, but perhaps 1 year. But, I'll tell you this much for IndyCar. I love the youth movement, and I also love the fact that Formula One drivers are starting to realize, hey, you know what? I don't need to bounce around these really bad teams in Formula One. I can go to IndyCar and drive a really good car.
You know what's fun? Passing. Let's go to IndyCar.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. Or these guys are like, I'm tired of waiting for my time in Formula One when all it is Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
Right.
Opportunity now over in IndyCar. I'm taking it because they've seen how Fernando Alonso did with his Indy 500 run, his one Indy 500 run. Now they're seeing Roman Grosjean have success. So I'm loving that because it is also bringing a whole other fan base over to IndyCar. And then when they come over to watch that driver or follow their story, guess what? They're seeing these young drivers battle it out as well. And it's just like, it's captivating. And I think this is really, the sport in the series is in a really good spot right now going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And looking at going forward, we look a little bit at the 2022 season, and the first question is, which driver can be the next Alex Palou? For me, I mean, obviously he's going to be right there again next year, but we just mean in terms of like another driver to maybe do something like what he did in his first few seasons. In terms of youth, I would go with Colton Herta. I mean, 6 wins, 17 top fives. In 48 career races. He had 3 wins this past season, which I think is the most that he's ever had in a season. He's had back-to-back finishes in the top 5s in points. He was 5th this season and 3rd in 2020. In terms of second season drivers, though, I mean, Romain Grosjean literally can have the Alex Palou story, where he's He's going to be, he finished 15th in points in 2021 with Dale Coyne, which is exactly what Palou did in 2020. Palou finished like middle of the pack in points and then goes on to win. So if you're looking for a literal carbon copy, even though Grosjean obviously is 35, so he's not part of the youth movement, he's part of that Formula One movement that you were talking about. He does take over the DHL ride from Andretti Autosport, which was formerly Ryan Hunter-Reay. So Ryan Hunter-Reay is out. Grosjean is in. And I think, you know what, regardless of who it is, I think next year's IndyCar season is going to be fun. Because you're going to have, like we talked about, you're going to have Palou and Dixon with Ganassi, Grosjean and Herta with Andretti, and obviously Rossi in there as well, and then you've got Newgarden with Penske. I mean, we could see the three.
Don't forget about Scott McLaughlin.
Scott McLaughlin as well could really all be in the mix for the three powers. Like, I know you don't really, when you talk, especially in today's like sports, you don't want to talk about the powers that be getting stronger, but I think this is one instance where all the powers that be are going to be strong at the same time, and it's going to be really fun to watch.
Oh yeah, I agree, but I mean, it's just the nature of the sport. It's just like in NASCAR. I mean, the powers that be are always going to be the powers that be, right, no matter what. And it is nice to see, I do believe, McLaren, essentially, Arrow McLaren, on the cusp of being one of the powers that be. By joining by Arrow and Schmidt-Peterson joining forces with McLaren, that's now putting them in a position where they have the money to throw around with the big boys, because that's what McLaren does. And I think with their driver setup and their race strategist, between just that whole team is just on the rise as well. So as far as like a driver that can set themselves up, to be like who I think is going to be that next step next year, I agree with you. The next Alex Palou in terms of youth is Colton Herta. I even said it earlier. He knows how to win races, and he knows how to put it on the pole. It's just, for him, it's about starting to get that consistency going. You could see that more this year. I think that's going to be the next step in his progression. Another full year with actual Andretti is going to be a good thing for him. Because technically this was his first year with Andretti fully. So I agree with that. But in terms of second season drivers, I love the pick of Romain Grosjean. I know that's an easy pick. I still say Scott McLaughlin is a driver to keep an eye out on. He is a championship caliber driver from supercars in Australia. And that helps. But also Jimmy Johnson, as the season went on, he got more and more comfortable in the car.
Is he running a full schedule next year?
I believe so. He's been testing in ovals. Once they get on ovals, I have a feeling Jimmy Johnson that's going to be his bread and butter, is where he's going to be really good. Especially because he knows Texas. He knows Indianapolis. He's won at both places in NASCAR. Come on. It'll be interesting for him on the shorter tracks. But do I think he's going to win a championship? No. Come on. He's not. Just because of how good the youth is right now. And then there's that other level of veterans that are even still ahead of him. I think out of all the rookies this past season, I think Romain Grosjean is the first to contend for a championship.
Well, he can literally have a carbon copy. It's like first 2 years.
Literally. But yeah, I mean, it's so tough. But like you said, next season is going to be fun because nobody's going to be overlooking Palou next year. I mean, man. And I want to see how these veterans that did not do too well this year do. And then Penske kind of had a down year if you think about it. Yeah, Joseph Newgarden finished second in the points, but it wasn't that there was nothing like super exciting about his season. I think he got 2 wins.
Yeah, he got a couple wins. He
even
hadn't
that
had,
it was
right. He hadn't had less than 3 wins in like a few seasons. Like,
so. I mean, if you know he's going to get back in victory lane frequently again, and if he can run consistent like he did this year, I mean, look, he didn't win that many races and he still finished second in the points. Penske is going to figure out some issues. They had any issues they had this year, they'll figure those out as well. Roger Penske, he owns the series. He doesn't want to get embarrassed by losing or being runner-up. So next season's going to be fun, and adding a race to the schedule, that's going to be fun. I think it's another oval, if I'm correct. So I love oval racing. I know everybody loves street racing or road courses.
Yeah, I prefer the ovals.
I love the ovals because in road courses and street races, they can get so spread out, and it all just comes down to pit strategy. Yeah, pit strategy is a great thing, but give me the old-fashioned passing and not have, can he set him up in this passing zone? Oh, no, he didn't get him, and that means he's going to be behind for another 3 laps, and maybe then he can set him up. Whereas ovals, it's just you're on the edge of your seat the entire time for an oval.
Yeah, I agree completely. And speaking of the schedule, that's the perfect see, B. Scott, we're killing it with segues right now. It's
like you send me the notes a day in advance.
Right. Yeah. Weird how that works out. The schedule for next season, it's going to all kick off February 27th in the streets of St. Pete. Some other key dates on the schedule: May 14th is when they're going to be at the IMS Grand Prix. May 29th is the 106th running of the Indy 500. July 23rd and 24th is the doubleheader at Iowa. That returns to the schedule. That's really exciting. July 30th, they'll return to the Indy Road Course. I would assume that's going to be like it was this past year with NASCAR.
Yeah, because NASCAR's the 31st.
Right. August 7th, they'll be in Nashville. September 11th is going to be the finale at Laguna Seca. So, one quick question before we wrap up IndyCar for the 2021 season. Which race are you most excited for? We talked about it. I'm excited that they're back at Iowa. Iowa, when they first brought it to the schedule, was one of my favorite races. My favorite memory of it was when they first ever race there. It was when Scott Dixon was in the 9, Dario Franchitti was in the 10. I think that in that season. And Scott Dixon and Franchitti, I think, both got in a wreck on the first couple laps of the race. And because there was so much carnage in that race, Scott Dixon, I think, still finished top 5 because everybody had wrecked, and he even though he took some damage, was able it wasn't critical damage where it would put him out of the race, and he there was a little bit of duct tape on his car, there was a little bit of they had to change a wing or whatever. It was something like that, and maybe it was Frankie. It was one of the two that ended up finishing 5th. They were still a couple laps down maybe, but it was just wild. So I'm with you. I love short track racing. Those races when IndyCar, I think this is part of it because when I first really got into IndyCar, they were still at Richmond, and that was with I remember the 2 Red Bull cars when they had Cheever and Scheckter, and they were doing really well. And you had when the Target cars were predominantly white with red striping, which was a long time ago. That was when they first came in with Target Chip Ganassi, and when they were still Target. I remember back in those earlier days when they raced at Richmond, or at least earlier in my fandom, not earlier days, but I enjoy those short tracks. Heck, I remember when they used to race at Dover. I remember watching Ayrton Dare and Mark Dismore and all those guys race at Dover. So I'm excited to see. I've always wanted to see IndyCar at Bristol too. Seeing those short tracks on the schedule, seeing them go back to Iowa is really exciting for me.
Yeah, Iowa's a good choice. I am excited to see. I mean, obviously the Indy 500. You can't.
Glad they brought that one back.
I'm so glad. Oh man, that was.
I was real worried that was going to be on the schedule.
I guess. I mean, I always like Gateway. That's one of my favorites. One, because I still want to get out there, and it's such an easy drive, and they typically also do the doubleheader with the NASCAR Truck Series.
Yeah.
So that one's a fun one. But I'm interested to see how Nashville does the second time around, because the first time, there's all that excitement and everybody's just pumped for it. Well, how does it go the second year around when everybody's, it's okay, the fanfare and the celebration of the inaugural is done.
Right.
Now what do we do?
Especially because the inaugural was exciting. You had the Marcus Ericsson thing. You had, all this carnage, though, that people, because people, I remember when all the stuff happened in NASCAR with the IMS road course, everybody was talking about how, comparing the two races. So, I mean, if there's more carnage next year that's not the novelty, how will it be received?
Craig, do you have a word of the calendar, or word of the day calendar?
Oh, am I saying carnage too much?
Oh my gosh, you said carnage in the last 5 minutes, probably about 10 times.
Hey, you know what? If you get, it's like that episode of How I Met Your Mother with the Robin drinking game. So I guess you pick a word of the week, and that's what you stick to.
There you go. We're gonna start a drinking game. Every time he says carnage.
You know what? And then I'm gonna be exactly like that episode and just start saying it on purpose. I'm gonna integrate it into my daily vocabulary.
You know what movie I'm gonna go see this weekend? Let there be
carnage.